Anderson that is delivering the talk today. Thank you.
So how is everyone today?
Good. Good and getting better.
Good to hear, good to hear. So every now and then, when I'm speaking to inspire or blah, 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 right? And then every now and then, something comes up that has to be said, and it's more about, let's think about this. Just thinking about, what does this mean, and how does this show up or demonstrate or manifest in my life, so that I can go out in the world and do what our teaching says we are called to do. So today is one of those, kind of things. So the theme for today is about inclusion, and the home office theme was Welcome Home. And the title that I selected for today was The Gospel of Inclusion, because there's this excellent book written by Bishop Carlton Pearson, and he's basically talking about how the concept of what Christianity was is mistaken, and how everyone is included in the salvation of the Christ. Because the Christ essence, the Christ presence, is the truth of who and what we all are. And because of that, we are all included in that good news. Right? That's the concept. Now, I would like to throw in there that we also have in New Thought our own version of the good news. And one, we heard it in the song, we heard it in Sue's treatment, is because God is all there is. Now, it doesn't get much more inclusive than that. Because if God is all there is, what possibly exists outside of that? You know, we've heard it before that God is a circle whose circumference is nowhere, and whose center is everywhere. That's everything. That means there is nothing that can exist outside of that circle, because the circle has no bounds. If it has no bounds, and it is everything, and it is everywhere, then it must be right here where we are, right? And yet, do we live in a way that is completely inclusive of that philosophy, that idea, that concept, and that power? Now, pause for a second. In Sue's meditation, we were doing what? What was this is a test. What was the ultimate goal or intention of her meditation? You can't say anything, because you know. No. Okay, I'll give you a hint. To release fears. Now, the thing is, you can't release something that you don't have, correct? Like, I can't drop my glasses right now, because they're not in my hand. In order to drop them, to release them, I have to have hold of them. So, in order to release our fears, we have to realize that somewhere in our paradigm, in our consciousness, we must be including them to be able to release them. Now, I mention that specifically to say that oftentimes, because we have this amazing teaching called New Thought, we like to deny and ignore the dark places. We like to pretend that they don't exist. We like to, no, I'm not depressed. God is good and everything's great. But we put on a brave face because we don't want people to know that right now it's not working for me. But in order for us to truly live the way we are called to live, we have to realize that there is a lot of stuff, and it has to all be included. And there are a lot of people that we don't necessarily like or care for. But if we're going to say that God is all there is, then they have to be included in this as well. For example, I don't know if you were one of the people like I was recently. While watching the news and Facebook, and, I heard about this gentleman who said that there's a select group of people who will no longer be allowed to serve in the military. What? Based on what? Now, the thing is, when I allow anger, hostility, etc., to well up within me and remain present, then I am doing the exact same thing. Remember, I think I did this with you. Remember before I made this analogy about going camping? Did I do this with you? Somebody going camping? Okay, so suppose Marianne and I go camping and we invite Sue and Kai and we go camping and then Doug stops by and we're all camping up in the mountains and we're out making s'mores and stuff and then Sue says, shh, 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 did you hear that? I'm like, we all get quiet and then, oh, whoa, 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 what was that? Oh snap, wait a minute, and then a snake jumps out and goes, and right in the leg. Now, we being humans who want to remain alive, what do we do?
Kill the snake.
Okay, we killed the snake.
Treat the injury.
I didn't get it because I can kill the snake, but the snake already bit me. So killing the snake does not prevent me from also dying. So fine, kill it, but I have to treat the injury. So anytime that anger, hostility, rage wells up within us and remains untreated, it becomes the venom that is now destroying the cells of our body, the cells of our minds, the cells of our soul. So when it wells up, and it's going to well up because we're human, part of who and what we are as the divine showing up in these human bodies, as these human bodies, says that we are going to have a range of emotions. We are not Vulcans. And if we are, then we're more like Spock than the other Vulcans because at least he's half human, so he can feel. So the thing is, do we give ourselves permission to feel all of it? Do we try to exclude some feelings? Do we try to exclude some people? Do we try to exclude some... No, I will not think that. Cancel, cancel, cancel. I don't want to think... Do we try to exclude these things, realizing or not realizing that we can't? If it shows up in our minds, if it shows up in our emotions, then it is ours to tend to. It is ours to treat. If Jay has a garden and I'm looking out of my back kitchen window and I look in the garden and I see dandelions and I don't like dandelions, am I going to go outside in my yard, climb over my fence into that garden and start plucking weeds? Or is that not mine? It's not mine to do. Especially if I've got stuff popping up in my own garden that need to die. My roof is leaking, Kai. Why am I not taking care? I'm so worried about her roof, though. But see, in New Thought, I will treat for that. And I will treat for world peace. But do I have world peace in my world? Do I have calm and a state of mindfulness in me? Or is it easier for me to project this prayer, this treatment, this idea onto somebody else? You know, in the Bible, there was this, I used to hate this passage, but there was this great passage where it said, look, check this out. You want to put something on the altar, right? Before you put anything on the altar, put that down, put it down. Go make peace with your brother first. Go make peace, because whatever you put on the altar, in the attitude and the state of mind that you are putting it up there in, it is now blasphemous. It is not going to serve as the offering it is supposed to serve, because you are offering it with animosity. I mean, let's think about if it's Mary Ann's birthday, and I say, thank you. Is she going to want the gift? She doesn't even know what's in the box. It could be something amazing, something she's been wanting for years. But because of the attitude with which I offered the gift, I don't want that. Okay, whatever, fine, I'll take it back then. How often do we offer, not that overtly, but do we offer that consciousness to the person that cut us off on the road? Do we offer that consciousness to the people on the news when we hear them saying something we don't necessarily like? Do we offer that consciousness to anybody who we pass as we're passing people in the world? Because if we are, and God is all there is, then who did we just snub? Ourselves as God. So it's one thing to say namaste, From a place of, I truly acknowledge and recognize that there is something in me that is love. It sees itself in you. Something in me that is the divine, and it sees itself in you. And that has to bow to itself because it is so amazing. And then there is the namaste that is not with the palms, but it's with, well, one finger. Not gonna do that, but it's one. And we do that in attitude. We are so quick to flip the bird at someone with our attitude of, huh, she knows she ain't got no business wearing that in the store. What does that have to do with you? Why do you not acknowledge that God, as infinite as it is, can show up as someone who's wearing a leopard print, whatever that is, and flip-flops, and whatever they are, wherever they want to wear them? Because if God is all there is, then why can we not include all of it in the entire spectrum of that is simply God expressing itself? And is it expressing itself in a way that is not holistic, healthy, and effective? You know, the homeless person who is a drug addict. We don't simply say, well, you're God, so I'm going to leave it. No, we step in because we recognize there is something that needs to be done, that can be done. So if we are not going to actively pick the person up, take them to a shelter, etc., then that is where we are called to pray. Because the moment we can say, I don't see a homeless person or a drug addict, I see God. And the moment we can acknowledge that and include that person in the beauty of, the magnificence of, they're no longer excluded. You are one of the many ways that God is expressing itself. And when I acknowledge that and I recognize that, it starts to shift the energy of who you are showing up as. There's a great movie based upon a real life story where Morgan Freeman plays the character, Dr. Joe Clark. And Joe Clark comes into this school, and school's really bad, and he comes in, and with an iron fist and a baseball bat, school goes on lockdown. If you've never seen the movie Lean On Me, it's a really good movie, and I love Morgan Freeman. And so, but the idea was, he was no longer going to look at the kids as drug dealers and users and miscreants, etc. It is, if I see the best in you, even when you can't see it for yourself, you're going to start to do what you need to do to match my vision of. There's I don't remember who said it, but it's, if you see a man, basically, if you see a man for who he is, as what he is, he can only get worse. But if you see him for all that he possibly could be, he has no choice but to get better. That's my paraphrase version. Do we include this idea of the infinite every time we look into another's eyes? Or do I simply look and say, oh, that's Tracy, I just met her. It's just Tracy. It's not possible. If I take off the glasses of humanity, where I am not able to, because with these on, all I see are individual. I see individual people. I see a piano, I see a stand, I see individual things. But the moment I take these off, these blinders, then I no longer can see individuals. I see the way quantum physicists, when they say that if you really look down and you look at an atom and a molecule and stuff, you realize that it's 99.999999999% empty space. That means nothing is solid ultimately. So this thing, as solid as it seems and appears, is an effect. It is the way spirit, source, the universe is showing up as this. But if we could really see the structure of this, we would see a whole lot of empty space. To the degree where we're like, wow. So it's that molecule, and that makes a piano? Wow, that's crazy. It's like watching a 3D movie. Glasses on, 3D. Glasses off, okay, I'm getting a headache, right? But when I take the glasses off, I don't see just Tracy anymore. I see the I am, the infinite magnificence of the universe showing up in human form. I am including everyone and everything in this. You know, there's this guy, may have heard of him, Joel Goldsmith. Anybody know this guy? Okay, so I'm going to read something that Joel said, because I said last week, sometimes Joel makes me want to slap him. I'm not, I wouldn't do it, but just saying. So, actually, where's it at? Please tell me I have it in here. Well, actually, I'll start with this then. So, Goethe says, knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. So I'm going to start there then. So, we know this teaching. We know the words, we know the passages, we know the books, we know the authors. But are we applying it? And are we willing to apply it? So when we turn on the news and we hear about another police officer who shot another person of color without cause, without probable cause, without due cause, without any cause that we can understand, are we extending this teaching to them? When we hear about whatever the administration is and whoever's doing whatever, whether it's against LGBTQI, whether it's against people of color, whether it's against people in immigration, whether it's against people of foreign birth and related to Islam, regardless of what it is. Because one of the things that, remember I said Home Office this week, they're mentioning, one of the things that they're talking about is that, I'm going to read there specifically. So let us go, we see our communities as being open, receptive, and welcoming of all people, all faiths, and all paths to God. That's what CSL is. Let me read that again. Open, receptive, and welcoming of all people, all faiths, and all paths to God. So, once again, when we see the news and we hear something that a fundamental Christian wants to now do something regarding, let's say, oh, we're going to electrocute these little gay children and make them straight. Because the Bible says, do we extend this love that our teaching, that our philosophy says, or do we want to shake our fist at them and say, see, that's why I love Christianity, because of, or do we say, that's not Christianity. What they are doing is not Christianity. What the terrorists do is not Islam. Because there are ministers, there are practitioners in our teaching who do not like people of color, who do not like LGBTQI, who do not like Hispanics. In our teaching. So it's not the teaching. It's not Christianity. It's not Islam. It's not Judaism. It's not religious science. It's how that person is choosing to express, choosing to take this teaching and use it. So the question then comes back then, how am I using it? How am I taking the teaching, taking the philosophy, how am I then applying it? There's a passage in the Bible where, when I was a Christian, where it used to I don't understand what that means. And it was this idea in Psalms, if I go to heaven, you are with me. If I go to hell and make my bed in hell, you are also with me. Basically, God, wherever I go, you're there. And so then I come to Washington, D.C. many years ago, and I go to Unity of Washington, D.C., and I hear the prayer of protection, and the last line in the prayer of protection is, wherever I am, God is. Wherever I am, God is. So let's go back to Psalms. If I go to heaven, and we know from our teaching, heaven is not a place, it is a state of consciousness. We believe that heaven is within us, and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. It's one of our we believe statements. So, when I go to heaven, you are with me. When I go to that place in my consciousness where I know that all is absolutely perfect, that which I call God, source, the I am, is with me. But when I go to that place called hell, Also a place of consciousness, a state of, nothing goes right. It's them, it's us. We have to fight. We have to go to war. I'm going to kill you. Because if I don't kill you first, you'll kill. That's hell. That consciousness is hell. Hell is the idea of us versus them. Hell is the idea of a rat race. Hell is the idea of we have to compete. Hell is the idea of I need to make more money and more money and more money and more money because if I don't, I will be left out. All of that is hell. Hell is, but I'm afraid that the doctor is going to say, hell is, but I'm afraid that my children might. That's hell. Because that is the absence of faith. And anytime it's the absence of faith, we are in this place of, oh, woe is me. But the thing is, when I make my bed in hell, the I am is there as well. Because it's all there is. And it says of itself, if that's what you want to believe, and that's what you want to practice, and that's how you want to live, I'm flexible enough to say okay. I give enough grace to say okay. So fine. Let's walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And when you decide that you want to build a tent, I'll be out here making s'mores, right? It's like it's always there with us because it can't be what? Separate. That's what we fear. You know, in the Course in Miracles, when it says atonement is the idea of there is at one. To atone is to realize there is no separation between that which we call God and ourselves. There is at oneness. There is only that. So am I living and moving and having that beingness from that place of I know that I know? And the thing that I was going to read about Goldsmith, which I can't find right now because I didn't highlight it, is this idea that God has been first something out there. Then it's been, but it's right here. It's time for us to evolve it and realize that God is right here in this thing called relationship. Because the manner in which we relate to another is the manner in which God is relating to itself. Now let's think about that, because when you say that, it's like, but you just made God an anthropomorphic. It's like, no, because how many of us talk to ourselves? And you don't have to admit it. You don't have to admit it, but I know you do. I can tell by the way some of y'all are grinning right now that when you're at home by yourself, sometimes when someone's at home with you, you have those moments of, oh, now I know I put my keys. Who are you talking to? I'm talking to myself. So we have relationship with ourselves. We have conversations. Not necessarily, what you doing today? I'm not really sure. What are you? Not that kind of conversation, but we talk to ourselves. We do have relationship with ourselves. Do we take care of ourselves? Because many of us know that there are times when we slip into, I really should have done, that really wasn't in my highest and best. I probably should do, I know. So we have relationship with ourselves. And that's how the human part of us, the human psyche, the human persona is relating to the I am side. The I am, which is the truth of who and what we are. How are these two being connected? But then when we are in relationship, it's the same idea. Because how I speak to another is how I am speaking to God. And the moment I am no longer speaking to God, and it's, Marianne, check this out. Last week, I am so sick and tired of Doug. Every time when I go into that, and fine, he can make me mad, and I can feel mad, but am I going to be mad? It's an altogether different state of consciousness. Feel it. And emotions like Marianne was, like Sue was talking about, emotions, fear, etc., flow easier. Energy and motion flows and can be released. But the moment I let what I feel become who and what I am, now the poison is starting to fester and the wound is getting infected, etc. So, Marianne, last week Doug said this, this, and this. And I chose feel this, this, and this. And it's 3 weeks later now, and I still choose to. That's on me, because I've allowed it to be what I've become now. But if I shed that and release that and move through that, then now I am able to understand, wait a minute, so we believe in the unity of all life, and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. Forgive him, and forgive myself for choosing to let his words or his actions set me off. Because there's only unity. If there's only one, then there's only unity. There can only be. So let me walk that. Let me step in that. Muji, anybody here know who Muji is when I say that name? Yes. Okay, so Muji is basically a Buddhist teacher, teaches a whole bunch of stuff. Great guy from the Caribbean. I think he's from Jamaica, dreadlocks and stuff. Very cool guy. And in one of his books, he talks about relationship being a spiritual practice. Because our relationships are the things that set us off. When we by ourselves, we can meditate and we can be as holy as the Dalai Lama. All is well, I am great. Namaste to you. And greatness. But the moment we are now in relationship with other people, whether they are face-to-face or people via Facebook, face-to-face or people via the news, it's now a relationship. And they set our buttons in motion. And that's the moment when ding, ow, ow, ow. Wow, Sue, how did you know that was there? Woo, you hit, wow. And that's my call for me to address this. Oh, Kai, did you really have to, wow. That hurt, wow. And that's my call to address this. Not to lash out at them, but to address what they have now called forth. And then to do my spiritual work. Because my spiritual work has to include everything that comes before me. The things that I like and the things that I don't like. The people that I like and the people that I don't like. Because this teaching doesn't say, just because I acknowledge someone as God, doesn't mean I have to now be their best friend and run around and be like, let's go play golf. It's on you, because you're used to paying $32 million for the golf course, so let's... Like, I don't have to be their best friend. But there's a part of me that has to say, but that's God too. And acknowledge it. Because the moment I can acknowledge it, I can release. I can release the fear. I can release the anger that I'm harboring towards anybody or anything now. So the question is, are we so inclusive, so willing to include everything that is, and acknowledge that it is sacred, even when it doesn't seem to be? So the puppy did a little thing on the dining room carpet. It's sacred. Even though I got to clean it up. It's sacred. When someone, my sons or the grandkids or my mom or, it's sacred. There is nothing that can exist outside of the scope of all that we call God. Nothing can exist outside of that. Are we willing to be so inclusive that regardless of what shows up in us, because remember, what shows up in us is going to be mirrored outside of us. So if we want, for example, it's talked about community. If we want community to be open, affirming, and welcoming, then it starts with each and every one of us. So the question is, do I ever say anything about them? Whoever them is. Do I ever make a statement about the other? Well, you know how they are. You know what they do. Any kind of microaggressions. Do I put any of that out into the cosmos? Or do I come back and say, what is mine to do? What is the work that I'm called to do? How do I? Because remember, the highest and the innermost, one. And it's based upon how I feel this presence within myself. How I feel and acknowledge this presence that I am. How do I do that? How do each and every one of us acknowledge that power, that presence? How do we live from that awareness? Let's treat. Allowing ourselves to simply be grounded, releasing into the breath, knowing that it is not we who are breathing ourselves, but it is the divine who is breathing us. And so as we breathe, I know that there is only one power, one presence, one divine, absolute, infinite love. One divine, absolute, infinite mind, thing itself, source, creation, the omniscience, the omnipotence, the omnipresence that we call God. I know that this is all there is. And knowing that it is all there is, I know it is the absolute fullness and completeness of who and what I am. And I know that it is not simply true for me, but it is true for everyone in this room, and everyone in this city, and everyone in this state, and everyone on this planet, and everyone on any planet, anywhere, ever. There is only one. Love is all there is. And as I know that love is all there is, I know that it is the truth of who and what I am. And knowing that it is the truth of who and what I am, I live and move and have my beingness in this truth, as this truth. So willing to include every man, woman, and child, circumstance, or situation that comes before me, knowing that if it shows up to me, for me, through me, that it is mine to heal, mine to love, mine to embrace. And so I willingly embrace it. I willingly choose to believe, to know that I am crazy enough to know that my presence, my power, and my word make a difference. For as Yeshua said, I did these miracles and so can you, and even greater. And what I know is that the miracles that he did were not miracles, but simply the use of spiritual law made manifest. And so I use the same spiritual law to manifest, to demonstrate,